They called him Untouchable, the most feared Mafia boss in the city. He had power, wealth, and an empire built on fear. But none of it mattered, because his only son was dying. Surrounded by the world's best doctors, every injection failed. Every machine beeped a death sentence. And just when hope was gone, she walked in. Not a doctor, not a specialist, just a poor delivery girl. And in seconds, she did what 1,000 doctors could not. She brought the boy back to life. The night air outside the Lockhart estate was bitterly cold, the kind of cold that seeped into bones, silencing the forest around it. But inside, silence was impossible. The chandelier above the master suite trembled faintly as 12 of the world's most expensive doctors scrambled around a child's bed. Their sharp voices overlapped with the harsh alarms of monitors, forming a discordant symphony of panic. 8-year-old Mason Lockhart lay in the center of it all, his small body arching against embroidered silk sheets. His face, ghostly pale, was streaked with sweat, lips tinged blue. Foam gathered at the corners of his mouth as seizures gripped him with merciless force. Each convulsion made his father's heart thunder louder than the machines. Vincent Lockhart stood at the foot of the bed, a man built like a statue carved from granite. He was the kind of man whose name carried weight in both boardrooms and back alleys, a figure whispered about in New York and Boston with the same mix of respect and fear. But here, stripped of control, he looked more like a drowning man than a kingpin. His hand clutched the bedpost so tightly the wood splintered beneath his grip. Do something. His voice was sharp but quiet, the kind of voice that carried more menace than a scream. Dr. Adler, flown in from Zurich only a day ago, injected a fresh round of medication into the IV line, his hands trembling despite decades of experience. We've tried every anti-seizure protocol. His body is rejecting everything. If this doesn't... He didn't finish. His eyes flickered toward Vincent, then away, too afraid to speak the word. Die! The boy's monitor shrieked, flatlining for a second before flickering back. A nurse gasped. Two others exchanged horrified looks. They had already tried treatments from cutting-edge stem cell therapy to experimental drugs smuggled across borders. 3 weeks of sleepless nights and endless procedures had all led here. Mason was still slipping away. Vincent's jaw tightened, his voice dropping to a dangerous murmur. If my son doesn't make it through this night, neither will you. His hand shifted toward the Glock, holstered at his waist. Every doctor in the room stiffened, their breaths caught in their throats. The monitor spiked again. Mason's tiny chest rose and fell violently, then stuttered. His body jerked as if trying to escape itself. The boy was dying right in front of them, and then came a knock at the door. Light, almost apologetic. It might have gone unnoticed if not for the second, firmer one. Not now, barked a nurse, sweat dripping down her forehead. The door opened anyway. Marisol, the long-serving housekeeper, peeked in nervously. Mr. Lockhart, I'm so sorry. The delivery girl. Vincent spun toward her, rage exploding in his voice. I don't give a damn about deliveries. But Marisol didn't retreat. Her voice wavered, but she forced the words out. It's the herbs, sir. The special medicinal ones you ordered. For Mason's meals. Vincent froze. For 3 endless seconds, the room went still, except for Mason's rattling breaths. His empire was built on precision and instinct, and right now instinct told him those words mattered. Out in the hallway, Anna Carter balanced a wooden crate in her arms. She was 32, exhausted from her 3rd shift of the day, her Fresh Harvest Organics polo shirt stained from hours of lifting crates. She should have turned and left, signed the slip, gone to the next stop, pretended she hadn't heard. That was her rule, but she had heard. A scream that didn't sound human, didn't sound like anything except pain made flesh. It had ripped through the silence of the estate and pierced straight into her chest. Her grandmother's words echoed in her memory. Anna, when someone suffers, you don't walk away. That's not who we are. For 32 years, Anna had practiced walking away. From fights, from opportunities she couldn't afford, from the kind of trouble that swallowed people whole. But that scream had cracked her armor. She dropped the crate. The sound of breaking glass jars echoed down the marble corridor. Without hesitation, She shoved past the stunned housekeeper and into the bedroom. Her sneakers squealed against the polished floor as every head turned toward her. Doctors froze mid-action. A guard reached for his weapon. But Anna saw only the child, writhing against silk sheets, drowning in seizures. Before anyone could stop her, she darted forward, weaving past a surgeon's arm with the speed of someone used to dodging danger. Her hands pressed against Mason's chest, feeling the erratic, burning pulse beneath fragile skin. "Who the hell are you?" Dr. Adler snapped. Anna didn't answer. She'd seen this before, not in textbooks, but in her grandmother's Kentucky kitchen when her cousin collapsed from wild berry poisoning. She knew the signs. The twitching muscles, the discoloration, the heartbeat spiraling out of control. A guard grabbed her shoulder, yanking her back. Anna twisted free, locking eyes with Vincent Lockhart. "If you touch me again, you'll regret it," she said, her voice low but unwavering. "That boy doesn't have time for your rules." Vincent's stare was lethal. Every doctor, every guard in the room braced for the order to throw her out, or worse. But something in her gaze stopped him. It wasn't fear. It was raw, desperate determination. "You have 30 seconds, Vincent said softly, like a verdict. "Save him, or you die here with him." Anna rolled up her sleeves. 30 seconds is all I need." The room was a storm of disbelief. The doctors, who had spent weeks battling Mason's mysterious illness with every tool modern medicine could offer, now stood frozen as a delivery woman in scuffed sneakers and a polo shirt declared she could save him. Their outrage boiled beneath the surface, but none dared speak louder than a whisper, because all of them had seen Vincent Lockhart's eyes, and those eyes promised death if they failed his son. Anna's heart pounded so hard it rattled her ribs, but her hands were steady as she pressed 2 fingers against Mason's throat. The boy's pulse was erratic, beating like a drum gone mad. His skin was hot, but his lips and fingertips carried the dusky blue of oxygen deprivation. She'd seen something like this once before, years ago when she was 12, standing in her grandmother Rose's tiny kitchen in rural Kentucky. Her cousin Danny had collapsed after eating foraged berries. No ambulance could have reached their home in time. The hills were too far, the roads too narrow. Grandma Rose hadn't panicked. She had whispered prayers under her breath while mixing steaming cloths with herbs from the garden. Anna had watched her grandmother press, rub, and soothe Danny's chest and arms, forcing his nervous system to quiet down, guiding his body to remember how to breathe. The doctors had laughed about it later, calling it superstition. But Danny had lived. Now, staring at Mason, Anna felt Rose's voice echo in her head. "The body remembers. Anna, sometimes it just needs a reminder." She barked an order, her tone cutting through the chaos like a whip. "I need hot water, clean towels, and those herbs I just delivered. Rosemary, thyme, lavender." For a beat, no one moved. Then Vincent cocked his gun at Dr. Adler without shifting his gaze from Anna. "Do it!" Marisol bolted from the room, skirts brushing the floor. A nurse hesitated, then sprinted after her to fetch towels. The rest of the medical team stared at Anna as though she were an alien. "This is madness," Dr. Adler shouted. "This woman has no medical training. If she interferes—" Vincent moved with chilling calm, his gun now trained directly at Adler's forehead. "You said my son wouldn't live through the night. So either she kills him, or you did. Which do you prefer?" Adler's face went white. He said nothing more. Anna ignored them all. She slid her hands along Mason's small arms, pressing into pressure points just as Rose had taught her. Mason's muscles twitched, his body fighting her touch, but she pressed on. "His nervous system's in overdrive," she muttered half to herself. "Everything's firing at once. I need to reset it, like rebooting a system," Dr. Adler sneered. "You think a human body is a computer? This is nonsense." "Shut up," Vincent said quietly. Marisol burst back into the room, her arms loaded with steaming towels and the crate of herbs. Anna snatched rosemary, thyme, and lavender, crushing them in her palms until the room filled with their pungent scent. She spread the herbs across a steaming towel, folded it tight, then pressed it against Mason's chest, directly over his racing heart. The boy jerked violently, a strangled sound tearing from his throat. "She's making it worse." A nurse cried, stepping forward. "Stay back!" Vincent barked. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, breathing through the fear. She felt her grandmother's presence in her hands, in her memory. 3 in, 5 in, 7 in. She counted softly, her hand rubbing slow, rhythmic circles on Mason's chest to mimic the beat of a healthy heart. With her other hand, she applied pressure to his neck and collarbone, guiding the chaotic pulse beneath her fingers. The monitor shrieked. The boy's body went rigid. Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger. "Your 30 seconds are up," he said coldly. 8 in, 9 in, Anna whispered, her forehead beaded with sweat. Her voice shook, but her hands did not. Then, in one suspended second, Mason went completely still. His chest stopped moving. The monitor flatlined. The room collectively gasped. Dr. Adler stepped forward, voice trembling. "She's killed him." "No," Anna whispered. Her hands pressed harder. "Not yet. Come back, kid. Come back." For 3 eternal seconds, silence swallowed the room. Then Mason's tiny chest heaved. A ragged, deep breath tore from his lungs, the desperate gasp of someone pulled from drowning. His fingers unclenched. The dusky blue faded from his lips, replaced by a faint pink. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor sang in steady rhythm. Mason's eyelids fluttered open, his gaze unfocused but alive. His small hand, trembling, reached up and gripped Anna's wrist as though she were the only anchor in a storm. Anna sagged in relief, her body trembling with adrenaline. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just breathe. You're safe." For a long moment no one spoke. Then a nurse whispered, "Impossible." Vincent slowly lowered his gun. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, cold, sharp, and deadly, remained locked on Anna. "Everyone out," he commanded, his voice soft as smoke. The doctors scrambled like frightened animals, dragging equipment with them. Nurses followed, avoiding his gaze. Even Marisol slipped out silently, bowing her head. Within seconds, the room was empty except for Vincent, Anna, and the boy whose life had just been stolen back from death. Anna straightened, her legs shaky. I should go check my truck," she muttered, stepping toward the door. "Sit." The word cracked like a whip. Vincent moved slowly, deliberately, circling the bed until he crouched beside her. Up close, Anna could see the dark rings beneath his eyes, the tension carved deep into his jaw. This wasn't just a father. This was a predator deciding whether to kill or spare. "Tell me," Vincent said quietly, "who you are, how you did what a dozen surgeons couldn't, and don't you dare lie because I'll know." Anna's pulse thundered in her ears, but she forced her gaze to meet his. "My name is Anna Carter. I'm a delivery driver. I work for Fresh Harvest Organics. I was supposed to drop off herbs, get a signature, and leave. That's it." Vincent tilted his head. "Nobody is just anything. Try again." "My grandmother," Anna said, her voice steadier now. "She was an herbalist. In Kentucky, doctors were 2 hours away. People had to heal themselves. She taught me what she knew. That's all." Vincent studied her face for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. She could feel him dissecting her words, testing them for cracks. Finally, he leaned back slightly, though the tension never left his shoulders. "You're not leaving," he said softly. "Not until I find out who's trying to kill my son." Anna froze, the truth of her situation crashing over her. She thought she'd stumbled into a tragedy. She thought she'd saved a life and could walk away. But as Vincent's gaze bore into hers, she realized she hadn't walked into tragedy. She'd walked into a trap, and there was no way out. The silence that followed Vincent's words was heavier than the marble columns of the Lockhart estate. Anna sat frozen on the velvet chair beside Mason's bed, her palms still damp, her heart still thundering from what she had just done. The boy lay sleeping now, his breathing shallow but steady, his small chest rising in a rhythm that had felt impossible only minutes before. But Vincent Lockhart's eyes were not on his son. They were on her, piercing, unblinking like a hawk dissecting prey. He had seen men beg, betray, and die, but this woman, this delivery girl, had walked into his house and undone weeks of failed medicine with nothing but herbs, steam, and a memory. "You saved him," Vincent said at last, his voice rough but quiet. But don't mistake gratitude for trust. Anna swallowed hard. I didn't come here to... You came here, he cut her off, because you heard a scream. A scream you shouldn't have heard. You barged into a world you don't understand. He leaned forward, his face inches from hers, his voice low and deadly calm. And now you don't get to leave until I know why my son is still alive. When someone in this house wanted him dead, the words lodged in Anna's chest like ice. She opened her mouth to protest, but stopped when she saw Mason stir faintly, a soft whimper escaping his lips. Without thinking, she leaned forward, brushing a strand of damp hair from his forehead. It's okay, sweetheart, rest. Vincent's eyes narrowed. That unconscious tenderness, that instinctive protectiveness, it was too natural to be faked. But it also unsettled him. She was already acting like she belonged at his son's bedside. He stood abruptly, straightening to his full, imposing height. You'll stay here, he said. In this house. Until I say otherwise. Anna's chest tightened. Mr. Lockhart, I can't. My daughter... Your daughter, Vincent repeated, the word tasting strange in his mouth. How old? 7, Anna answered cautiously. Emily? She's at after-school care. She's waiting for me to pick her up. Vincent's expression shifted slightly, something unreadable flickering across his features. But it was gone as quickly as it came. You'll call her, he said. Tell her someone else is picking her up. My people will handle it, Anna stiffened. No, you can't. His voice cut through her panic like a blade. If you want her safe, you'll do exactly as I say. Her breath caught. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Anna forced herself to nod. Let me call my neighbor. She'll understand, Vincent gestured toward the nightstand. A sleek phone lay there, far newer than the cracked budget smartphone Anna carried. He picked it up, dialed a number, then held it out to her. Go ahead. Her fingers shook as she took it. The line rang twice before Mrs. Chun, her elderly neighbor, answered with her usual warmth. Anna, everything okay? Anna's throat tightened. She forced her voice to steady. Yes, Mrs. Chun, I'm stuck at work. Could you please take Emily home tonight? I'll explain later. There was a pause. Of course, dear. Don't worry. When Anna hung up, her hand lingered on the phone a moment longer, as though clinging to the last shred of her outside life. Then she looked up to see Vincent watching her, his expression unreadable. You're staying, he repeated. You'll keep my son alive, and you'll help me find who's poisoning him. Anna froze. Poisoning? Vincent's jaw flexed. Don't play stupid. His seizures began after meals. Always after meals. Every test, every treatment has failed because someone keeps feeding him death. His eyes darkened. That means someone under my roof, someone I've trusted for years, is trying to kill my heir. Anna's stomach turned cold. She thought of Mason's frail body, his lips blue, the convulsions tearing through him. All those meals carefully prepared, carefully supervised, yet still killing him. Why would anyone? She began. Power, Vincent snapped. Loyalty, betrayal, take your pick. Men will slit throats for less than a seat at my table. He leaned closer, his voice a growl. But my son is not a bargaining chip. And whoever did this, his hand brushed the Glock at his side. They won't live to regret it. Anna stared at him, heart pounding. This was a world she had no place in, no preparation for. She delivered herbs. She worked triple shifts to pay rent. She kissed her daughter goodnight with promises of better days. And now she was trapped in a mansion of marble and shadows. Caught in a game where children were poisoned for power. I don't belong here, she whispered. Vincent tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle. Maybe not. But you walked through that door, Anna Carter. And now you're in it. The only question left is whether you survive it. A knock interrupted them. The heavy doors opened, and a man stepped inside. Shorter than Vincent, stockier, with the weathered face of a fighter and eyes that missed nothing. Boss, he said. You wanted me. Vincent's lips thinned. Anna, meet Rocco Moretti. My oldest friend. My son's godfather. Rocco's gaze swept over Anna, sharp and suspicious. So you're the miracle worker. His voice dripped with skepticism. Strange kind of miracle. Show up at the exact moment the boy crashes. Do what 12 doctors couldn't and suddenly everything's fine. Anna's stomach knotted. The way his eyes lingered on her, the calculated way he said exact moment. It wasn't gratitude she heard. It was accusation. Coincidences don't exist in this world, Rocco added coldly. Anna opened her mouth, but Vincent's voice sliced through the tension. Enough. Rocco fell silent, but his glare never left her. Vincent looked at Anna. Starting tomorrow, you'll have full access to the kitchens. You'll watch every meal prepared for Mason. You'll make sure no poison touches his plate again. The air thickened. Rocco's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed just enough for Anna to see it, the flicker of something darker. Fear, anger, guilt, and in that moment Anna understood. This wasn't just about healing a boy anymore. She was standing at the edge of a war inside the Lockhart Empire, and the first shot had already been fired. The Lockhart mansion was a fortress disguised as a palace. From the outside, it looked like a place built for royalty. Columns of polished stone, windows framed with golden trim, sprawling gardens lit by lanterns that glowed against the night snow. But once Anna crossed into its deeper halls, she realized the truth. This wasn't a home. It was a kingdom of secrets, and every corner whispered betrayal. After the confrontation in Mason's bedroom, Vincent had not let her out of his sight. 2 guards escorted her down the sweeping staircase, their silence more threatening than words. Anna's sneakers squeaked against marble that probably cost more than her entire apartment. She kept her head down, clutching her trembling hands together, aware that every servant, every guard, every shadow seemed to watch her. Vincent led her into a room that could only be called an office, though it looked more like the command center of a general. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, though half the spines were untouched, props for power rather than knowledge. On the massive oak desk lay stacks of papers, 2 phones, a laptop with encrypted screens, and a crystal glass half filled with dark whiskey. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit," Anna sat, her shoulders stiff. She felt like a student dragged before the principal. Only this principal could order her disappearance with a flick of his hand. Vincent poured himself a drink, his movements deliberate. He didn't offer her any. He sat back, swirling the glass, eyes never leaving her. "Tell me again," he said quietly, "exactly how you knew what to do." Anna clenched her fists in her lap. "I already told you. My grandmother—" "Names," Vincent cut in. "Details. Don't waste my time with fairy tales." "Rose Carter," Anna said, her voice firmer now. "She lived in Clay County, Kentucky. No doctor for miles. People went to her when they were desperate. She taught me everything she knew, herbs, pressure points, remedies that weren't in textbooks. I didn't think it mattered until tonight." Vincent's expression didn't change, but he leaned forward slightly. "So you're telling me a poor girl from Kentucky just walked into my house and saved the heir to my empire because of some backwoods magic?" Anna's jaw tightened. "Call it whatever you want, but your son is breathing because of it." The silence stretched. Vincent's stare was sharp, weighing her words against every instinct honed from decades of sniffing out lies. Finally he leaned back, sipping his whiskey. "You've got fire," he said softly. "Most people crumble when I look at them like this." You fight back." Anna didn't answer. She was too busy trying to keep her fear from showing. The door opened. Rocco entered. His presence filled the room like smoke, thick, suffocating. He crossed his arms over his broad chest, his eyes hard as iron as they landed on Anna. "She's trouble," he said without preamble. "I don't like her here." Vincent's gaze flickered. "You don't like a lot of things." Rocco stepped closer, his boots thudding against the rug. "Think about it, Vince. She shows up the same night Mason crashes worse than ever. She strolls past guards, barges into the boys' room, and suddenly she's the miracle cure. That doesn't smell right." Anna stiffened. "If I hadn't come in, Mason would be dead." "Convenient," Rocco shot back. "Almost too convenient." "Enough," Vincent snapped, his voice cracking like a whip. He set the glass down so hard the crystal rang. "You think she planned this? That she poisoned my son for 3 weeks just to waltz in here with a towel and herbs?" Rocco didn't flinch. "In our world, nothing is coincidence. You taught me that." Anna's pulse spiked. His suspicion wasn't just hostility, it was dangerous. He was planting seeds of doubt, the kind that could turn Vincent's gun back on her in an instant. She forced herself to meet Rocco's gaze, steady and unblinking. "I didn't plan this. I didn't ask to be here. I heard a child screaming, and I couldn't walk away." For a moment, the three of them stood locked in silence, the weight of power and suspicion pressing down. Then Mason's faint voice echoed from upstairs. A weak, broken call. "Daddy?" Vincent was on his feet instantly, his mask of steel cracking as he bolted toward the door. For that brief moment, Anna saw not the mob boss, but the terrified father. When he was gone, Rocco lingered, stepping closer until his shadow loomed over Anna. His voice dropped to a near growl. "I don't know who you are, girl, but you stepped into the wrong house. Watch your back." He left her with those words, the door slamming shut like a gunshot. Later that night, they showed Anna to a guest room. Calling it a guest room felt like a cruel joke. It was larger than her entire apartment, with silk curtains, a chandelier, and a bed so soft she feared she'd sink and disappear. But despite its luxury, she felt no comfort. She stood at the window, phone in hand, staring out at the snowy courtyard. Guards patrolled below, their guns glinting under floodlights. Finally, she dialed Mrs. Chun again. When her daughter Emily's small, sleepy voice came on the line, Anna's throat closed. "Mommy? Where are you? You promised we'd make cookies tonight." Anna pressed her forehead to the cold glass, tears threatening. "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Something came up at work, but I'll be home soon. Tomorrow, we'll make the biggest batch of cookies ever, just you and me. Promise." "Promise," her voice cracked. "I love you, Emmy." When she hung up, the silence of the mansion pressed in again. She knew the truth deep down. Tomorrow wasn't certain. Not here. Not in this house where betrayal festered like rot. A knock startled her. "Come in," she said quickly, wiping her face. Vincent entered. He looked tired, older than he had earlier, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up. The veneer of power had cracked, revealing something raw. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Rocco doesn't trust you." Anna let out a bitter laugh. "That makes two of us." Vincent's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Good, keep it that way. Don't trust anyone here. Not Rocco, not my staff, not even me," her breath caught. "Then why keep me here?" "Because you saved my son," Vincent said simply. "And because you may be the only one who can save him again." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "If you're right, if someone is poisoning him, then you've stumbled into something bigger than you know. And until I know who it is, you don't leave." Anna's stomach turned. "And if I refuse?" Vincent's smile was cold this time. "You won't. Not if you want to see your daughter again." The door shut behind him, leaving Anna alone in the too-perfect room. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her phone, staring at Emily's photo on the cracked screen. She whispered into the silence, "What have I gotten myself into?" And deep in the house, past locked doors and guarded kitchens, someone else whispered too, quietly to themselves, as they prepared Mason's next meal. "Tomorrow the boy won't wake up." The mansion was not a place of sleep. Even at midnight, when the snow lay heavy outside and the wind scraped against the shutters like fingernails, the Lockhart estate pulsed with quiet movement. Guards rotated in pairs across the corridors, shadows slipped between doorways, and the faint hum of power lingered like static in the air. Anna lay in the massive bed of the guest suite, staring at the ceiling. The chandelier above glimmered faintly from the moonlight, slipping through curtains. She hadn't touched the silk sheets except to sit on them. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mason convulsing, saw the monitor flatline, heard Vincent's cold voice counting down her 30 seconds, and behind those images, her daughter's face would rise, Emily's warm brown eyes, her messy braids, the way she clutched her stuffed rabbit at bedtime. What if I never make it back? Anna thought. What if I vanish here and no one ever tells her why? She sat up suddenly, restless, pacing across the cold marble floor. That was when she noticed it, the sound of muffled voices. At first, she thought it was just guards passing by, but the voices didn't fade. They grew sharper, closer, though still too low to catch the words. She moved toward the wall and pressed her ear against the paneling. Two men. One voice was unmistakable, Rocco's, the other she didn't recognize. Their tones were harsh, clipped, filled with tension. "She doesn't belong here." Rocco's growl was distinct. Vincent is blinded by panic. "He's letting some outsider," the second man interrupted, voice cautious. But she saved the boy. Everyone saw it." Rocco spat back. "Coincidence, trickery. Maybe she caused it in the first place. You ever think of that? The best doctors in the world fail, and a delivery girl fixes it with leaves and hot towels. No, something stinks. And I'll prove it." Anna pulled back from the wall, heart pounding. He was already suspicious, already circling her like a wolf waiting for a stumble. If he convinced Vincent she was part of the poisoning plot, her life was over. But then Rocco's voice dropped lower, and though muffled, she caught fragments. "Meals, supplements, he'll keep getting weaker unless I—" The other man muttered something about caution, but Rocco's final words chilled her. "If she digs too deep, I'll bury her with the boy." Anna's hand flew to her mouth to keep from gasping. She stumbled back from the wall, chest tight. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was confession. He was behind it. He had to be. But how could she prove it? The next morning, the mansion woke like an army camp. By 5 a.m., the kitchens roared with activity. Anna stood in the corner, her fresh harvest polo traded for a simple apron. She had insisted on blending in, though the staff all looked at her with thinly veiled suspicion. Chef Mario, a wiry man with quick hands, chopped vegetables with military precision, barking orders to his crew. Every move was watched, every ingredient logged, and always Rocco hovered nearby. He didn't touch food, didn't cook, but his eyes scanned every motion like a hawk. Every jar was inspected, every seal checked. He nodded when satisfied, scribbled notes in a leather-bound book, and moved on. On the surface it was flawless. Too flawless. Everything about the kitchen screamed order, precision, cleanliness. But Anna knew enough to understand that perfection was often a mask. Somewhere, within this tightly controlled dance, poison had slipped through. Mason's meals were prepared separately from the rest of the family's, each portion measured and documented. Anna watched closely, memorizing who touched what, who delivered supplies, who handled utensils. She noticed small things, the way Mario avoided tasting sauces himself, the way certain supplements were added at the very end, just before serving, when Mason was brought down later that morning. His steps were slow, but his face had more color than before. He clutched a crayon drawing in his hand, a shaky picture of two stick figures, one small and one taller with blonde hair. When he spotted Anna, his whole face lit up. "That's you," he said shyly, holding out the picture. Anna knelt, her throat tight. "For me. You saved me," Mason whispered. Her heart broke a little right there on the kitchen floor. She tucked the drawing into her pocket, blinking back tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means more than anything." From across the room, Vincent watched the exchange. His jaw softened almost imperceptibly. But Rocco, standing just behind him, scowled as though the sight burned his eyes. That afternoon, Vincent called Anna to his office again. His tie was loosened, his whiskey glass full. He gestured toward an envelope on the desk. 50,000, he said. "Down payment. Help me catch who did this, and you'll get 10 times more. A house. A future for your daughter. Protection." Anna stared at the envelope, her heart aching. 50,000 was everything. Emily's college fund, safety, stability. But she pushed it back across the desk. "I don't want your money." Vincent's brows lifted. "Everyone wants money. I want your son to live," Anna said, her voice steady. "That's it." For a moment, Vincent simply studied her. Then, for the first time since she had met him, he smiled. A real smile, faint but genuine. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met," he murmured, "or the dumbest." "Probably both," Anna admitted. But even as they shared that moment, a shadow moved outside the office door. Rocco's silhouette lingered for a fraction too long before vanishing into the corridor, and Anna knew he was watching, always watching. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Anna returned to the kitchen alone. She had stolen a key from Rocco's desk earlier, her hands shaking the whole time. Now, with only a flashlight for company, she slid it into the lock of the cabinet he guarded so fiercely. The door opened with a faint click. Inside were rows of jars, supplements, powders, vitamins, all labeled neatly for Mason's diet. She lifted one, organic cacao powder, for smoothies. But when she opened the lid and smelled it, her stomach turned. It wasn't chocolate. It smelled sharp, chemical wrong. She dipped a spoon inside. Among the brown powder were tiny specks of something greenish, almost invisible. Her flashlight trembled. This is it. This is how he's been doing it. Anna quickly snapped photos with her phone, her breath shallow, her hands clammy. She resealed the jar and slid it back exactly where it had been. But just as she closed the cabinet, she froze. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. They drew closer. She killed the flashlight, pressing herself against the wall, every muscle rigid. A shadow passed the doorway. The footsteps stopped, lingering. The doorknob twisted slightly. Anna's heart nearly burst out of her chest. Then a voice, "Rocco!" "Boss wants you upstairs." The footsteps retreated. Anna waited 10 whole minutes before daring to move. When she finally stumbled back to her room, her legs shook so violently she thought they might give out. She collapsed onto the bed, staring at the photos on her phone. Proof, but proof wasn't safety. Not here, because if Rocco found out what she knew, Anna Carter would vanish into the Hudson River before sunrise, and worse, he'd finish what he started with Mason. She whispered into the dark, clutching her phone to her chest like a shield. "God help me, I'm in too deep." The Lockhart estate the following day felt like a stage set for a play where everyone had learned their lines too perfectly. The chandeliers gleamed brighter than usual. The maids moved silently. The guards kept their hands a little too close to their holsters. To anyone who didn't know better, it might have looked like a house at peace. But Anna knew. She could feel it, the tension vibrating under the marble floors, seeping into every corner of every room. She hadn't slept. The photos she'd taken of the cacao jar burned like fire on her phone. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mason's convulsions, his tiny hand gripping her wrist, and the green specks of poison mixed into what should have been chocolate. She knew Rocco was behind it now, but knowing wasn't enough. Proof in her pocket wasn't proof in Vincent's eyes. Rocco had been his right hand for 15 years, his closest confidant, Mason's godfather. Her word against his would mean nothing. She needed a way to drag the truth into the light. That morning, Vincent summoned her to breakfast. Mason sat at the long oak table, pale but smiling faintly as he picked at scrambled eggs. His eyes lit up when he saw Anna. "Anna," he said, pushing away his plate and running to her with arms outstretched. She knelt and hugged him, feeling the fragility of his small frame, the way he leaned into her, as though she were the only safe thing in his world. "Morning, sweetheart," she whispered. Vincent's gaze flickered between them. His son hadn't smiled like that in weeks, not for the doctors, not even for him. And yet here he was, clinging to this woman like she was family. As they sat, Vincent announced, "Tonight we celebrate. Family dinner, only my inner circle. We show them Mason is strong, that the Lockharts don't fall." Rocco, seated at the far end, stiffened. "Boss, is that wise?" "The boy's still recovering. Mason is strong enough," Vincent said firmly. "And it's time to remind everyone that loyalty is what keeps this family alive." His dark eyes slid to Anna. "And disloyalty is punished." Rocco's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Still, Anna caught the way his gaze lingered on her, sharp and suspicious, as if he already knew she was digging. The day passed in a blur of preparation. The kitchen was a frenzy. Chefs moved like soldiers, chopping, frying, tasting, all under Rocco's watchful eyes. Anna was there too, blending in, pretending to assist with garnishes and herbs, though her mind was miles ahead, plotting. She had a plan. Dangerous, reckless, but the only one she could think of. If she couldn't expose Rocco quietly, she would do it publicly, in front of everyone, in a way that even Vincent couldn't deny. Chef Mario eyed her curiously when she asked to prepare a special toast drink, an old family blessing, she called it. Honey, herbs, lemon, a splash of brandy. Innocent enough. But for Rocco's glass, she added something extra, a crushed tablet from the medicine cabinet in her room, designed to mimic Mason's symptoms. Sweating, tremors, spasms, harmless in the long term, but damning in the short. To seal it, she added a pinch of the poisoned cacao powder she had stolen. Just enough to discolor the tongue the same way Mason's had been. It was a gamble. If she was wrong, she'd just poisoned an innocent man. If she was right but failed, Rocco would kill her before the night was over. By evening, the dining hall was a cathedral of power. Crystal chandeliers bathed the long table in warm golden light. 12 men sat in tailored suits, each one a capo or enforcer, each one controlling a piece of Vincent's empire. They raised glasses of wine when Vincent stood. 3 weeks ago, Vincent said, his voice steady but heavy with truth, I thought I'd lost everything. My son was dying, and no doctor could save him. Then this woman, he gestured to Anna, seated further down the table, walked into my home and did what was impossible. Murmurs rippled down the line. Some men nodded respectfully. Others eyed her with suspicion. Vincent raised his glass higher. To my son's health, to second chances, to loyalty, the men echoed, glasses clinking. Anna caught Mario's signal. The special tray was ready. He stepped forward, distributing the small glasses of her herbal toast. Each man received one. Rocco's was darker, though only she would notice. Vincent lifted his again. To family, they echoed. Everyone drank. Anna's pulse raced as she counted silently in her head. 1 minute, 2, 3. At first, nothing. Conversation flowed again, the men laughing, toasting, speaking of business. Mason sat beside his father, drawing quietly with crayons on a napkin. Anna's hands clenched in her lap. Had she been wrong? Then it began. Rocco shifted in his chair, wiping sweat from his forehead. His hand trembled as he reached for water. You all right? One of the capos asked. I'm fine, Rocco muttered, his voice strained. But 30 seconds later, his face paled, his body twitching. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. He clutched his chest, gasping. I don't feel... Convulsions ripped through him. His chair toppled backward as his body jerked violently, just as Mason's had countless times before. The dining hall erupted in chaos. Get a doctor, someone shouted. Vincent was already on his feet, horror flashing across his face. He dropped to his knees beside his oldest friend, gripping his shoulders. Rocco, what's happening? Anna stood slowly, her heart thundering, her voice cutting through the noise. That's what Mason endured. Every seizure, every meal, every poison you fed him. The room went dead silent. All eyes turned to her. What are you saying? When Capo demanded, Anna knelt by Rocco, prying his jaw open. Look at his tongue. She tilted his head back, exposing the greenish discoloration around the edges, the same mark Mason had shown. That isn't from my drink. That's from the same poison that nearly killed Mason. Gasps spread around the table. Vincent stared, disbelief and rage colliding in his eyes. Anna pulled out her phone, shoving the photos she'd taken into his hand. I found this in the locked cabinet Rocco guards every night. Cacao powder contaminated with toxins. The same powder he used to make Mason's treats. The same powder that nearly killed your son. Rocco's body twitched, his voice hoarse but filled with venom. She's lying. Framing me. Boss, don't listen. Vincent's face hardened, the truth dawning like a blade across his features. The supplements. The treats you gave him, always after meals. Always when you were there. Boss, Rocco gasped, sweat pouring down his face. You know me. 15 years. I've bled for you. I've killed for you. She's... Enough. Vincent's voice was low, deadly. The men around the table shifted uneasily, hands twitching toward holsters but waiting. The room was a crucible now, and the verdict hung in the air. Rocco's eyes flared with desperation. I did it for you, he snarled suddenly, strength rising in his voice. For the family. Mason makes you weak. You care too much. Your father built this empire on blood and fear, and now you waste it worrying about civilians, about children. His words turned into a scream. With him gone, you'd be the boss this family needs. The silence shattered. Every man in the room stiffened, the betrayal ringing like a gunshot. Vincent's face was carved from stone. He stood slowly, his chair scraping back across the marble. His hand moved to his holster. "Loyalty," he said softly, almost gently. "You were my brother, Rocco, my friend, my son's godfather." His voice hardened. "And you poisoned my blood." He drew his gun. Rocco's eyes widened. He lunged, not at Vincent but at Anna. The shot rang out, deafening in the chandeliered room. Rocco collapsed onto the floor, blood pooling beneath him, his eyes frozen wide in rage and disbelief. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Vincent lowered his gun, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a verdict. "No one betrays the Lockharts and lives." The men bowed their heads in silence. Anna stood frozen, her breath shallow, Mason clutching her arm, trembling. She pulled him close, pressing his face into her shoulder. She had gambled everything and won. But as she looked at Vincent, standing over the body of his oldest friend, she realized something chilling in this house. Victory and survival were never the same thing. The dining hall reeked of gunpowder and betrayal. The echoes of the shot still lingered in the air, rattling against the vaulted ceiling, vibrating through the marble floors. Rocco's body lay sprawled across the shards of crystal glass and overturned plates, his blood spreading like a dark halo on the pristine rug. For a long moment, no one moved. The capo seated nearest to Rocco finally lowered his trembling hand from his pistol. Another glanced nervously toward Vincent, waiting for orders, waiting for the storm that always followed such a killing. But Vincent said nothing. He stood motionless, shoulders squared, his gun still in hand, staring at the body of the man who had been his brother in everything but blood. The man who had once saved his life in a street ambush, who had held Mason at his christening, who had shared cigars and laughter at this very table. And yet, there he was, reduced to silence and blood. Vincent finally exhaled, a sound more like a growl than a breath. His words, when they came, were cold steel. "Loyalty is everything. Without it you are nothing." The men at the table murmured assent, bowing their heads. "Yes, boss." But Anna wasn't watching them. She was under the table, clutching Mason tightly to her chest. His small hands gripped her blouse, his tiny body trembling as though the world had split apart above him. His eyes were squeezed shut, tears leaking from the corners. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered in his ear, rocking him slightly. "Don't look. Don't listen. Just stay with me." The boy buried his face against her shoulder, and she began humming, an old lullaby her grandmother used to sing, the same tune she sang for Emily at bedtime. Her voice shook, but it was soft, steady enough to give Mason something solid to hold on to amid the chaos. Above them, Vincent moved. He strode around the table like a predator, surveying territory. "Clean this up," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for hesitation. Two guards rushed forward immediately, lifting Rocco's corpse by the arms and dragging it toward the door, leaving streaks of red behind. Another guard began sweeping shards of crystal into a pile with trembling hands. "Call Dr. Adler," Vincent added without looking up. "Tell him the boss needs his shoulder patched. And tell him if he breathes a word of what he saw tonight, he'll wish he never picked up a scalpel." "Yes, boss." As the guards worked, Vincent finally crouched near the overturned table where Anna shielded Mason. His shirt sleeve was soaked crimson where the bullet had grazed his shoulder. But his eyes were softer now, almost human. When they landed on his son, "Mason," he said quietly, his voice stripped of power. "It's over. You're safe." The boy peeked from Anna's embrace, eyes wide, wet, terrified. Then with a sudden sob, he launched into his father's arms. Vincent winced at the impact on his wounded shoulder, but wrapped Mason close, burying his face into the boy's hair. For the first time in weeks, Mason clung to his father, not with fear, but with relief. Anna stepped back slowly, giving them space. She stood amid the shattered glass, her hands trembling, her heart still racing, and thought, "I should leave. Right now. Run and never look back." But her eyes drifted to Mason's small frame, to the way his tiny fingers clutched Vincent's lapel, as though it were the only anchor in the world. And she knew she couldn't walk away. Not yet. 3 days later, dawn spilled soft pink light over the estate. Snow had melted into glistening patches on the lawns, and for once the air inside felt calm. Anna stood in Mason's doorway, leaning quietly against the frame. The boy slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. No convulsions, no monitors screaming, no poison coursing through his body. His small chest rose and fell steadily, his face serene. She almost cried just watching him. A presence stirred behind her. Vincent stood in the hall, his arm in a sling, his face pale but composed. He looked older, carved by the weight of betrayal, but lighter too, as though killing Rocco had severed a chain he didn't realize he carried. "You're up early," he said. Anna startled slightly, but then managed a weary smile. Couldn't sleep. First time seeing something like that? First time causing something like that, Anna corrected softly. "If I hadn't exposed him, Mason." Her voice caught. Vincent stepped beside her, both of them watching Mason's steady breathing. "You saved him twice. Once from poison, once from the poisoner. Don't carry guilt that belongs to Rocco." They stood in silence for a while. The moment felt almost normal, two parents standing at a child's door, keeping watch. Except one was a mob boss drenched in blood, and the other was a delivery driver who had stumbled too far into a world she never chose. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. "The other families will hear about this. They'll know a traitor sat at my table. Some will see it as weakness. Others as strength." He turned slightly, his jaw tightening. "What do you see it as?" Anna looked at him, tired but resolute. A reminder that the deadliest enemies aren't across the city. They're the ones you let eat at your table. Vincent's eyes flickered with something, respect perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement. Behind them, Mason stirred. He blinked awake, spotted Anna, and his entire face brightened. "Anna!" He scrambled up in bed, his voice hoarse but joyous. "You're here!" Anna crossed the room, checking his forehead automatically for fever, brushing his hair from his face. "Good morning, sweetheart. How do you feel?" "Good, really good," he said, eyes sparkling. "Am I safe now?" Vincent sat on the edge of the bed, resting his good hand on his son's shoulder. "You're safe. I promise no one will ever hurt you again." Mason turned back to Anna, wrapping his small arms around her neck. "She saved me. She's like Aunt Anna." The words hit her like a punch to the chest, simple, innocent, yet heavy with meaning. Her throat tightened as she hugged him back, whispering, "I like that." Vincent's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Then it settled. "You're family now." Later that morning, Vincent called Anna to his office. The room smelled faintly of leather and smoke. Papers were stacked neatly on the desk, but this time something new lay there, a folder. He slid it across the polished wood toward her. "That's the deed to a house in Westchester. 4 bedrooms. Good schools for your daughter. It's yours." Anna blinked, opening the folder with trembling hands. A house, not just a house, a future. Security she had never dared dream of. "There's also a bank account," Vincent continued, his voice even. $500,000 to start. More will come monthly. Enough that you'll never have to work another day if you don't want to. Anna closed the folder slowly, pushing it back. "I can't accept this." Vincent arched an eyebrow. "Why not?" "Because Mason still needs me." Her voice was firm now. "You can buy me a mansion, give me all the money in the world, but that boy just went through hell. He doesn't need a stranger in a guest house. He needs someone he trusts, watching every meal, every bite, every detail. Staff didn't save him. I did." Vincent leaned back, studying her. "You want to stay here?" "In the kitchen, as a worker, when you could live in luxury." "I want to keep Mason alive," Anna said simply. For the first time in years, Vincent laughed. A real laugh, short and sharp, but genuine. "You're the strangest woman I've ever met, Anna Carter." "I'll take that as a compliment," she replied. "It is." Vincent stood, extending his hand. "Fine, you stay. Watch over him. But the house and money are yours anyway. For Emily, for your future. Consider it payment for a debt I'll never be able to repay." Anna shook his hand. "Thank you." That evening, Anna stood on the balcony outside Mason's room, the boy beside her in his pajamas, his small hand wrapped around hers. Together they watched the sun dip below the horizon, streaking the sky with gold and crimson. "It's pretty," Mason said softly. "It is," Anna agreed. "Every sunrise, every sunset. It's a gift, a chance to start over." He looked up at her, his voice small. "Will you stay forever?" She squeezed his hand gently. "As long as I breathe, no harm will ever come to you again." "That's a promise." Behind them, the balcony door opened. Vincent stepped out, his arm still in a sling, a cup of coffee in his hand. He watched the two of them silhouetted against the fading light, the boy he'd nearly lost, and the woman who had saved him twice. For a man who lived in shadows, who trusted no one, the sight was almost blinding. Vincent didn't speak loudly. The words were just for himself, drifting into the evening air. Thank you. Whether it was fate, God, or the universe listening, he didn't know. But he meant it, because sometimes salvation didn't come from allies, or soldiers, or men with guns. Sometimes it came from a delivery driver with a kind heart and a grandmother's wisdom. And in Vincent Lockhart's dark world, that was the rarest gift of all. The Lockhart mansion was quieter now, but it was not peace. It was the silence that follows a storm, when everyone listens for the next rumble of thunder. Rocco's death had shifted something permanent in the estate. The men who had once walked confidently through the halls now lowered their voices, their eyes always flicking over their shoulders. No one said it aloud, but the truth clung to every corner of the house. If Rocco could fall, anyone could. For Anna, the days that followed blurred into long hours in the kitchen and restless nights in her room. She insisted on tasting Mason's food before it reached him, every spoonful, every crumb, even the water. At first, the chefs mocked her silently, exchanging smirks when they thought she wasn't looking. But as Mason's color returned, as the boys' laughter began to echo again in the halls, those smirks disappeared. Slowly, the kitchen staff began to respect the outsider. Though fear and suspicion still lingered, Mason clung to her like a shadow. Wherever she went, he followed. Into the kitchen, into the gardens, even into Vincent's office when he dared. Anna tried to keep a boundary, to remind herself that she was only temporary, that she was not his mother. But each time Mason reached for her hand, each time his eyes lit up when she entered the room, the wall she built around her heart cracked a little more. One afternoon, as she stirred a pot of broth, Mason tugged on her apron. "Anna? Yes, sweetheart? Do you like it here?" The question startled her. She looked down at his wide eyes, so hopeful, so fragile. "It's different than what I'm used to," she admitted carefully. "Daddy says you're family now," Mason whispered. "So that means you'll never leave, right?" Anna's throat tightened. She crouched to meet his gaze. "I'll never leave as long as you need me, Mason. That's a promise." His smile was enough to break her heart. But later, as she stood by the sink rinsing herbs, she felt the weight of that promise like chains. She thought of Emily, her real daughter, waiting at home with Mrs. Chun, asking each night, "When is Mommy coming back?" And Anna wondered how long she could balance both worlds before one shattered completely. Vincent, meanwhile, had changed in ways no one expected. He still ruled his empire with iron fists, still had meetings that ended with whispers of blood and money. But in quiet moments, Anna saw something else. A man haunted by betrayal, yet softened by his son's survival. One evening, he found her in the kitchen after everyone else had left. She was cleaning Mason's utensils for the third time, scrubbing them until her hands were raw. "You don't trust anyone here," Vincent said from the doorway. Anna didn't look up. "Should I?" "No," he said simply, stepping into the light. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, revealing scars she hadn't noticed before. "Trust is earned. And in this house, it's a currency rarer than gold." She finally looked at him. "Then why do you trust me?" Vincent's lips curved faintly, almost bitterly. "I don't, not fully, but Mason does. And sometimes that's enough." The air between them grew heavy. Anna turned back to the sink, her voice quiet. "Rocco wasn't the only one, was he?" Vincent's silence was answer enough. His gaze darkened, sharp as glass. "Betrayal spreads like rot. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. "There are still snakes in my house, Anna, and one day they'll strike again." Anna gripped the edge of the counter, her pulse quickening. "And you expect me to stay here knowing that?" Vincent stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "I expect you to do what you've already done, keep my son alive, until I burn out every traitor hiding in these walls." That night, Anna couldn't sleep again. She paced her room, her thoughts spiraling between fear and duty, between Emily's small voice and Mason's fragile smile. Finally, she sat at the desk and opened her phone, scrolling through the photos of the contaminated cacao powder, of Rocco convulsing at the table, proof of one man's betrayal didn't solve the bigger problem. What if there are more? A faint sound pulled her from her thoughts. She froze, listening. Footsteps again, but not the heavy, patrolling kind she'd heard before. These were lighter, deliberate, moving slowly past her door. Her heart pounded. She crept silently to the edge of the doorframe, straining to listen. The steps stopped. For a moment she thought someone might knock. But instead there was a faint scrape like metal against wood. "They're trying the lock." Anna's blood ran cold. She grabbed the nearest thing she could, a heavy lamp from the nightstand, and held it like a weapon, every muscle taut. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then silence. Minutes crawled by before the footsteps retreated. She didn't sleep at all after that. The celebration dinner had silenced open doubts. But rumors began to swirl in the city beyond the estate walls. Other families had heard of Rocco's betrayal, of his execution at Vincent's own hand. Some whispered that Vincent had grown weak, too soft to see danger until it was at his son's throat. Others whispered the opposite, that his ruthlessness had only sharpened, that no one, not even his oldest friend, was safe if disloyalty was detected. One evening, as Anna sat with Mason in the library reading aloud from a children's book, Vincent entered with two men she hadn't seen before. They wore tailored suits, their faces scarred from lives of violence, their eyes sharp and cold. "These are my new lieutenants," Vincent said simply. "Replacements for what was lost." The men inclined their heads politely at Anna, but their stares lingered too long, appraising, calculating. She knew the look. She had seen it in the eyes of men sizing up prey. When they left, Mason whispered, "I don't like them." Anna stroked his hair. "Neither do I, sweetheart." Later that week, Vincent called Anna to his office again. This time there was no envelope of money, no house deed. Instead, there was a map spread across the desk, marked with red lines and symbols she didn't understand. "This is bigger than Rocco," he said without preamble. "Supplies intercepted. Routes compromised. My rivals knew things they shouldn't have. He wasn't working alone." Anna's stomach knotted. "And you think it's someone else inside?" Vincent's eyes locked on hers. "I know it is, and until I find them, you don't leave this house. You don't take Mason outside these walls. Not to the gardens, not to the gates. You stay here where I can watch you both." Her breath caught. "You're locking us in." "I'm keeping you alive," Vincent corrected. His voice softened just slightly. "And if you're smart, you'll realize the difference." That night, Anna stood once more on the balcony outside Mason's room. Snowflakes drifted down, soft and silent, catching the light of the estate's flood lamps. Mason slept inside, curled under heavy blankets, his small hand still clutching the drawing he'd made for her. She clutched her phone, staring at Emily's photo again. Two children, two worlds. And she, caught between them. The door creaked open behind her. Vincent stepped out, his coat draped over his shoulders, a cigar burning faintly in his hand. He stood beside her in silence for a while, watching the snow. "Do you regret it?" he asked finally. Anna didn't look at him. "Saving Mason? Never." "No," Vincent said, his voice lower now. "Walking into this world." Anna turned, her eyes fierce despite the fear coiled inside her. "I didn't walk in. I ran toward a scream, and I'd do it again, for the first time." Vincent looked at her not with suspicion or calculation, but with something close to awe. "Then maybe," he murmured, exhaling smoke into the night air, "you're exactly what this family needs." And in that moment, Anna realized something terrifying. She was no longer just a guest, or even a prisoner. She was becoming part of the Lockhart Empire, and there might be no way out. The Lockhart estate did not sleep easily anymore. Even when the lights dimmed and the guards changed shifts, there was a pulse in the air, paranoia thick as smoke. Rocco's death had not ended the fear. It had only deepened it. Every whisper in the hall, every creak of the marble floors carried weight. Anna felt it most at night. Mason would sleep peacefully now, his body free of poison, his face innocent again. But Anna, she barely closed her eyes. Too many footsteps in the hall, too many shadows beneath doors. She had never lived in a fortress before, but she was learning what it felt like to exist in one, safe from the outside, yet constantly threatened from within. Her heart ached for Emily. Every night she called, telling her daughter some version of the truth. "Mommy has to work late again. I'll be home soon, I promise." But Emily's voice was growing colder, more disappointed with each call. Anna could hear it. And yet, she could not leave Mason, not now, not after everything. One morning, Vincent summoned her to his office. The heavy oak doors shut behind her with a sound like a verdict. He was sitting behind his massive desk, maps and documents spread in front of him. His sling gone, though his shoulder still bore fresh stitches. "You look tired," Vincent said, his tone more observation than concern. "So do you," Anna replied. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Fair enough." Then his expression hardened. "There's something you need to see." He slid a thin folder across the desk. Anna opened it and felt her blood run cold. Inside were surveillance photographs. Not of the estate, not of Vincent's rivals, of her. One picture showed her walking into the organic market 2 months ago. Another showed her standing outside Emily's school, holding her daughter's hand. Another, taken more recently, showed her leaving the Rousseau estate kitchens late at night, looking over her shoulder. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "They were sent to me anonymously," Vincent said flatly. "Which means 2 things. 1, someone is watching you. And 2, someone wants me to know they're watching." Anna's hands trembled on the folder. "Who would—" "Someone inside," Vincent cut her off. "Someone who knows your movements. Someone who wants me to believe you're not just a delivery driver who got lucky." Anna's stomach turned. "You think this is about me?" "I think," Vincent leaned forward, his eyes like iron, "that someone is setting you up. And until I find out who, you're not leaving my sight." The lockdown began that night. Guards were assigned to her door, to Mason's door. The kitchen was no longer just a workplace, it was a cage. Every hallway held eyes, every meal was tasted twice. Mason noticed the change. "Why can't we go outside?" he asked as Anna tucked him into bed. "It's too cold," she lied gently. "But Daddy walks outside every night." Anna hesitated, then kissed his forehead. "Then maybe Daddy just likes the cold." But Mason was too smart. He frowned, eyes narrowing in a way that made him look far older than 8. "Something bad is coming, isn't it?" Anna's throat closed. "Nothing bad will happen to you. Not while I'm here." The bad thing came sooner than either of them expected. 3 nights later, Anna woke to a muffled crash. Not the usual creaks and thuds of the estate. This was sharp, deliberate. She threw on a robe and rushed to Mason's room. The boy was still asleep, curled under blankets, unaware. Then she saw it. The window latch had been forced open. Snow blew in through the crack. Her blood turned to ice. She grabbed Mason, shaking him awake. "Sweetheart, we have to go." His eyes blinked open, confused and frightened. "Anna, what's—" "Shh!" She pressed a finger to his lips. "Quiet, no questions." She pulled him into her arms, heart hammering, and slipped into the hallway. The guards who were supposed to be outside his door were gone. God help us. She didn't make it 10 steps before a figure emerged from the shadows. One of Vincent's lieutenants, the scarred man introduced days earlier. His face was blank, his pistol already raised. "Boss wants the boy," he said coldly. "Hand him over," Mason whimpered, clutching tighter to Anna. Her instincts screamed. This wasn't Vincent's order. This was the betrayal Vincent had warned her about, blooming like poison in the dark. "No," Anna said, her voice steady despite the terror in her chest. "You'll have to kill me first," the man smirked. "That can be arranged." He stepped closer, the gun unwavering. Then a shot rang out, louder, sharper. The lieutenant staggered, eyes wide with shock, blood blooming across his chest. He collapsed to the floor. Behind him stood Vincent, pistol smoking in his hand, his face carved with rage. "You touch my son," he growled. "You die." He strode forward, pulling Anna and Mason behind him, his movements sharp and controlled. More footsteps thundered through the halls, guards, loyal and disloyal alike, responding to the sound of gunfire. "Stay behind me," Vincent ordered, voice like a blade. "It's starting." "What's starting?" Anna demanded, clutching Mason tighter. "The war," Vincent said simply. The estate erupted into chaos. Gunfire cracked through the marble halls. Shouts echoed. Doors slammed. Somewhere, glass shattered. Vincent moved like a general, barking orders, his men forming lines, returning fire against shadows of betrayal. Anna crouched behind a pillar with Mason, covering his ears, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since childhood. At one point, Vincent knelt beside them, his hand on Mason's cheek. Despite the chaos, his voice was calm. "Listen to me, son. You stay with Anna no matter what. She'll keep you safe." Mason's lower lip trembled. "But what about you?" Vincent's jaw clenched. "I'll end this." Then he rose, disappearing back into the storm. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, Anna couldn't tell. Time dissolved in fear and gunfire. Finally the noise faded. The halls grew quiet again, save for the moans of the wounded and the distant barking of orders. Vincent returned, his suit torn, his face streaked with blood and sweat. He looked like a man who had just wrestled with demons and barely emerged alive. "It's done," he said hoarsely. "The traitors are dead. The rest are bound. My house is mine again." Anna wanted to collapse in relief, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw no peace there. Only exhaustion, only fury, and beneath it all, loneliness. Later, as dawn bled across the horizon, Anna found herself on the balcony once again, Mason sleeping safely inside. Vincent joined her, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You saved him again tonight," he said quietly. "You saved both of us," Anna replied. For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the snow-covered grounds below. Guards dragged away the bodies of the fallen. Smoke curled from the chimneys like ghosts. Finally, Vincent spoke. "You asked me once why I trusted you. I didn't, not then. But I do now." Anna turned her face toward him, surprised. "You're not just Mason's protector anymore," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "You're ours, mine. This house, this family owes you everything." Anna's heart pounded. She wanted to argue, to remind him she had a life outside these walls, a daughter waiting for her. But the words stuck in her throat. Because deep down, she knew the truth. She belonged here now, not because she wanted to, but because fate had chained her to this family's survival, and there was no walking away. Inside, Mason stirred in his bed, murmuring her name in his sleep. And outside, as the first rays of dawn touched the snow, Anna Carter realized something chilling. She had stepped into the world of the Lockharts as a stranger, but now she was part of their war, and wars never let you go.